Alright, I'm going to go over the Somalian pirate infographic that you've been reading these sources in order to create. If you are brick and mortar, you should have picked up a sheet of paper today that you can start creating your infographic on. If you are an e-learner, then you can do this on one PowerPoint slide. I don't want a whole presentation, just one slide, or a Word document, or Paint, or whatever you find is easiest. Once you see the examples, you can also choose to draw it by hand, but it does need to have color, so if you don't have coloring utensils, that won't work. And you also need to submit a very clear picture of it, okay? There is no bell work today, by the way, so on your bell work sheets you can simply write no bell work, and there is an objective, but just it's okay to write no objective for the day. We're going to review examples of infographics. They'll hopefully get you started. We're going to go over the requirements of what the expectations are to clearly define what I'm expecting. And then we'll review the rubric, which is what I'll use to grade it, so you can see exactly what everything in the project is worth. We're going to first start by looking at some examples of infographics so you know what they look like. These infographics are ones that I pulled off of Google, so they are not about Somalian pirates. So these first three show you what I'm talking about. They are visual representations of information. So the one on the left is actually just about the history of infographics. The one in the middle is about the history of communication, and then the one on the right is just about Halloween. They're all different, they have different themes. Yours will be Somalian pirates. If you're not great at art, that's okay. You can choose to print stuff offline. You can go to the media center in the morning, grab those. You can choose to trace things. If you don't draw like actual pirates, that's okay as long as you're adding shapes and colors. Here are some more examples just on COVID to make it relatable to our current day issues. So the one on the left is one for someone who's not really an artist, right? It's more percentages and visual aids that are not drawings. The one in the middle does have some people, and then the one on the right again is one that's for people who maybe aren't great at drawing. It just has shapes and color. These last two actually are on Somalian pirates. They provide information that's different from what I require of you, but I figured I'd show you some different ideas to get you started. Alright, so let's talk about the requirements. These are the things that you will have to have on your infographic. You are creating an infographic about Somalian pirates and how they limit the effectiveness of their EEZ, which is a formal region, right? So we're in the lesson, limits of formal regions. So you need to discuss how do they limit the effectiveness of their EEZ. You must include information from sources 1 through 5 and cite the source. You can just simply refer to them as source 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. You don't need to cite the article name or anything like that. The information must be on an infographic. For my brick and mortar students, that means the 11 by 17 sheet that you'll pick up today. For my e-learners, like I said, you can do it on paper and turn it in, but it must be clear, or you can create a PowerPoint slide, Word document, etc. Again, if you're doing PowerPoint, I don't want a whole presentation, just one slide. The infographics I just showed you are all one sheet, right? You should provide background information that explains why the piracy started. Almost all of our sources, 3, 4, and 5, talked about that. Describe one way that an organization has tried to solve the issues that led to the piracy. Those are in your articles, source 4 and 5. Look for those there. Describe one way that the piracy has been challenged. How is it being fought? So if you combine those two, that's okay. Just make sure both of those pieces of information are there. And you need to explain one human characteristic of the formal region of Somalia and one physical characteristic of the formal region of Somalia. Minimum one of each, but the more you include, the better your grade's going to be. I'm going to show you the rubric that I'm using to grade, and I'll also have this on Canvas for you. I'm not printing out copies, but if you want to look at it while you create your infographic, it'll be on your Canvas page today. This is the infographic rubric. I'm just going to go over the first two. I'm not going to go over all of these. So does it explain the limits of Somalia's EEZ, right? That's the first requirement. So if you look in the first column, that means you did a good job if you get anywhere from 8 to 10 points on that. Yes, the infographic clearly explains the limits of Somalia's EEZ and gives multiple examples of these limits from the sources. You'll earn between 4 and 7 points if your infographic begins to explain the limits of Somalia's EEZ with limited detail or little or no evidence. And you'll only earn 0 to 3 points if the infographic does not accurately explain the limits of Somalia's EEZ. So when you're making your infographic, check and see, okay, does this meet her requirements based on the rubric? I know how many points I'll get, right? Does it cite sources from our projects? So you'll get 8 to 10 points if yes, there are several quality citations that support the information on the infographic. 4 to 7 points if there are either limited citations or the citations are not properly used to support information. Like let's say you cite an article that doesn't talk about what you're talking about, then that's not proper citation. There are either no citations or citations are random and do not provide support. If that's the case, you're going to get 0 to 3 points, okay? So if you see I break all of my requirements down for you in this way, you can have the substitute today for my brick and mortar. Leave this, you can pause it here and leave this up on the board, but also this is on Canvas, okay? And that's it. So you guys go ahead and get started. If you're finishing up your sources, that's okay. We're going to have today and tomorrow at least to work on the infographic. And if the sub says that you guys were good, then we'll probably continue on until Friday.